See, I once read a Bible translation that told me that Abraham was assigned female at birth and Sarah was assigned male at birth. My father Abraham. This person even went on to say that it wasn't until God told Abraham to circumcise himself and his household that he became a man. And the only reason they were childless was because they were both trans. Listen, I was livid because I kept imagining how many other people would pay attention to this translation and utilize it. It even opened me up to this world where I started to see people make reference to this man's resources. And you know the alarming thing, he was a rabbi. That's actually why I paid attention to it. But it wasn't until I started to see some funny things I realized there are so many things wrong with this translation. Now, imagine the world that we are living in. Imagine a world where the next generation don't have access to truth. What do you think that they'll be fed with? What do you think that they'll be receiving in the name of the Bible? So this conversation is for people that will naturally see themselves gravitating towards the easier to read version. You need to realize that those easier to read versions are nice, they are good, they are beneficial, but a number of times they compromise truth. This is not a generic thing, but there are some that are very popular that compromise truth. So you need to know these things. And that's why when a person asks the question, what is the best Bible translation? The first thing that I said was, this answer is not as straightforward as you might think. Because before you come to the point of understanding what a good Bible translation is, you need to understand how to identify a good Bible translation. You also need to understand the various categories of Bible translation. And that is why in this third video, I'm going to be talking about a new category called the paraphrase translation. This happens to be one of the most popular, and a lot of people are tilting towards this translation. But I'm not here to judge or criticize anyone. What I hope this video is going to do is help you make informed decisions and study your Bible from a place of knowledge, so that you don't fall into that trap of false doctrines, false teachings, or with materials that compromise truth. So, what is the paraphrase translation? The paraphrase translation is, like the name implies, a paraphrased version of the original manuscript. Sometimes they are not even the paraphrased version of the original manuscript. They are the paraphrased version of an already existing Bible translation. They are not necessarily focused on accuracy to the original manuscript. They are filled with the individual's opinion, thoughts, and oftentimes doctrine. And so you might be reading it thinking that you're reading a Bible that is easy for you to understand, but you don't know that you are infusing yourself with a person's personal bias, and you believe that is what the truth is. So under this category, what are some very popular translations that people might be acquainted with? The first is a very common one. It is the Living Bible. The Living Bible, interestingly, was written by a man called Kenneth Taylor. And listen, that Bible is full of so many things that are unique to the individual's opinions, ideologies, and thoughts. Now, when a number of scholars criticized this Bible, it forced him to invite some Old Testament and New Testament scholars to review the Bible and write what was appropriate. Now, these people came together to rewrite this Bible, and that led to, guess, the New Living Translation. Yes, the New Living Translation is an offshoot from the Living Bible, and that is why it is advisable for anyone that loves the Living Translation to embrace other translations like the KJV, New King James Version, ESV, New International Version, or New Revised Standard Version. These versions are more reliable to an extent. Another translation that you want to pay attention to is the Contemporary English Version. The Contemporary English Version tries to make the translation as easy as possible for people to read. Sometimes they tweak things and they infuse their own ideologies or interpretation into the text. That means that some things are completely paraphrased. For example, in Paul's conversation with Timothy, he told Timothy, anyone that has to be an overseer must be a man of one wife, he must be good with finances, have a good character, all of that. But in Contemporary English Version, you're going to see anyone that will be a church official. So basically, they made it a gender-neutral text. Anyone that wants to be a church official must be good, must have a good character. When it comes to the part where Paul says must be a man of one wife, the translator is saying must be faithful in their marriage. So that means that the person that is reading it does not necessarily have to feel like Paul is castigating women, but it's like, okay, this is a gender neutral text. Anybody can read it, anybody can benefit from it, and that can also be very dangerous because you are trying to make it more appealing to a wider audience at the expense of truth. So if you are a big fan of the contemporary English version, you also want to cross-check other translations. A very popular translation, or a very popular paraphrase translation that people like to read is the Message translation. Listen, the Message translation plays its part. It is easy to read, very interesting. But I remember when I bought the Message translation, I said, you know what, let me go online and check what this man is about. So I went online and I discovered that the translation was written by one man called Eugene Peterson. When I read the biography of Eugene Peterson, I started to see some things that were a bit questionable. At the top of that list was the fact that he had voiced that he wasn't really comfortable with homosexual text in the Bible. So I sort of found it a bit worrisome, and I decided to take my time to study the text. And I discovered that, for example, in the book of Proverbs chapter 18, where it says that he that finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord, Eugene doesn't say he that finds a wife. He says he that finds a spouse. And so he made it gender neutral. Another thing that I found was in the book of 1 Corinthians, when Paul was speaking about the various things that were abominable in the eyes of God. For example, he says, don't you think that these things are not right when you are drunk, when you sleep with a man as with a woman? Eugene Peterson read this text, and his interpretation was not men that sleep with men, but people that abuse sex. Again, he was toying that safe space because it definitely portrayed his opinion on that particular text. So the Message translation is easy to read, but it is not necessarily a reliable text. It is more of a commentary, and that's what NAF Press, which was the publishing house for the Bible, said, that this Bible is not supposed to replace your original or your primary Bible. It is supposed to be read as a text that gives you fresh insight into biblical text. So it is not a Bible, it is considered a commentary. I know it hurts, you like it, but I'm giving you what is true. The final translation I'm going to be talking about is the Passion Translation. I know that you are passionate about this translation and you love it, but the Passion Translation has been heavily criticized in the theological space. They've read the Passion Translation and it is being concluded that it is not the most reliable Bible. It is advised that the Passion Translation be read as a commentary than a Bible. It was written by a man called Brian Simons, and it is heavily paraphrased. I'll give an example. In the book of Proverbs 18, when it says that he that finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord, Brian says he that finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord, but he that commits adultery or he that lies with an adulteress and chases a good woman away shall lose favor from the Lord. That part was added, it wasn't in the text. So if one was to ask, how do you navigate the world of paraphrase translation, I would say this: you can have them, but very importantly, prioritize having other translations that are not commentaries, translations that are not after their own biases or opinions, translations that are faithful to the original manuscript. You can read the paraphrase translation as an addition, but it is very important that you don't look to them as your primary Bible translation. My deep prayer for everyone that is listening is that your desire would be to know God, and whatever it will cost you, whatever it will take, you will give yourself to that process. So I hope this really helped you. Until next time, have a very beautiful day. God bless you. Bye.